Thank you. And do we have everybody here, Kelly?
Councilman Goldsmith is not showing his here.
I'm sure he'll pop in when he can. So it is 6 o'clock. I would like to officially call this meeting to order. If you would all stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Justice for all. All right. The first and probably the most important thing on our agenda tonight is our introduction, in person, kind of, sort of, with Rodrick Lewis, who is the field representative for the office of Senator Ben Cardin. He came all the way down here. So he's in town hall, Council. And I hope that we are all comfortable in our homes. So Roderick, I am so sorry, but please introduce yourself, and then I'm going to give council an opportunity to introduce themselves, tell them a little bit about, you know, who they are and how they got elected and all of that good stuff. So the floor is yours.
Sure, and no need to apologize. I live in Charles County.
Oh, that makes me feel so much better. Thank you.
So, not a big problem at all. So I'm Rodrick Lewis. Been on the job since July of this year, replacing Rachel Jones. She has since been appointed to the Maryland House of Delegates, so very happy for her. I've been in Maryland for just about a decade. I moved to Charles County in 2012 when my dad got a new job at Andrews Air Force Base, and relocated in St. Mary's County after I graduated from Thomas Stone High School to attend St. Mary's College of Maryland. Lived there for most of about a decade. I lived in St. Mary's County. After I finished school, recently moved back to the Charles County area with my partner, who was originally from Prince George's County. And so St. Mary's County had became home to me. So Charles County is the middle ground for us in between Charles and Prince George's County. So happy to be back in the county. Again, I'm just the eyes and the ears of Senator Cardin in Southern Maryland. So I cover St. Mary's, Calvert, and Charles County for him, attend meetings and meet with constituents, try to get a good idea of where everybody feels on a number of issues, and I report that back to the senator. I attend events on his behalf, and just try to make sure that what he's working on in Washington, people is aware of, and the concerns that you guys are hearing locally, he's also aware of. So I'm kind of a middleman in that regards. What I briefly kind of want to touch on before we get to everyone else's introductions is Senator Cardin has released his earmark. It's kind of hard to see. I'll send this to you in an electronic form. His earmark guide for FY 2023. So we received a good amount of success with FY 22 requests. 69% of the requests that were submitted to our office got approved. And so we are now on a tour making sure that all of our counties and municipalities are aware that the FY 2023 process is underway. And if there's any projects that are currently in the pipeline that could benefit from a one-shot infusion of funding, those would be the type of projects that you want to kind of see if they can get support through an earmark request. Projects that require multi-year funding are not exactly the type of projects that you want to submit through an earmark request. And the guide will kind of go over in great detail what type of projects that can get approved and what can't. But kind of just give you an idea, we've gotten assistance with parks approved. We had a conversation last week with St. Mary's County to see if we can help them with establishing a YMCA in their county. So there is, Charles County received $5 million for the FY 2022 earmark year, they received $5 million for the Southern Maryland Rapid Transit Project. So our area is receiving earmarks requests. Possibility of getting something for La Plata is real. You know, just have to assess those projects, have your staff review the earmark guide, and I'm happy to meet with anyone. And Mike Thomas, who's our appropriation advisor, who is the man with the details, I like to refer as, he's also happy to meet with anyone in your town government that would like to talk about this in greater detail. So with that, I'll just end. You know, I'm new to my role, but I come from, you know, I'm more accustomed to being on the side of the citizen than I am on the side of the government. And I say that I have an open door policy, you know. So if there's a constituent that has a concern that falls in the federal side of things, don't hesitate to shoot me an email. You know, I'll follow up with whoever I need to follow up to make sure that people are being heard properly. That's something that's very important to me, and something that I aim to, you know, get done during my tenure here. So with that, I'll end. Happy to answer any questions, and I look forward to meeting everyone on the town council. It's my understanding that you guys are fairly new to your roles.
Oh, I'm the old one here.
You're the
They're
old
all, I'm like a has-been here. They're all new, but I do have a question for you before we go into that. What is the deadline for submitting?
Excellent question. I'm surprised I didn't remember to mention the deadline. March of next year. So March 2022, we're asking that everyone try to submit your request by the end of March 2022. But Mike Thomas, our appropriation advisor, is taking meetings now. And he's a very flexible schedule. So I know that they're in the works of planning a conference call in early December to include all county officials and municipality officials in Southern Maryland. But if there's an opportunity before then, Mike will be more than happy to try to meet with you all.
Fantastic. Well, I am going to go down the line. Did Councilman Goldsmith, did he join us? Kelly?
He did.
Problems.
He's called in.
Okay, you know what, Jim, I'm going to start with you to tell so that you can introduce yourself to Mr. Lewis here. Tell a little bit about yourself, and so he has a better sense of who the council is.
Okay. Jim Goldsmith. I live on Washington Avenue. I've been here physically in the town for the last time since '85. Born and raised in Charles County, La Plata High School graduate. Wife's La Plata High School graduate. My two kids also graduated. I went to the University of Maryland and finished up there. And to avoid Vietnam, I joined the Navy. Spent 30 years hiding out, and then retired. And I've been retired actually 24 years now, and felt like I tried to get back on the council to see what I can do, and try to be active in the town. So look forward to continuing my service here. Any questions?
No.
Oh, I have a lot of questions for you. Councilman Trollinger.
Sure. Thank you so much for joining us. I wish we were in person with you today, but hopefully very soon. My name is Matt Trollinger. I live in La Plata, of course, town council, but I have a law firm in Waldorf that serves clients throughout the state for personal injury and workers' comp. So if people get hurt, we help them go through the process with insurance companies, making sure that their lost wages and surgeries are paid for and that we provide for their families. So very privileged to serve with this council. I think everybody brings a unique perspective, and we've all gotten along okay so far. So hopefully we can continue and work with you in Senator Cardin's office. And I appreciate you guys being willing to recently step up for the first responders dinner for Charles County. I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Oh, you were the individual I communicated with over email. Nice to put a face to the email.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you very much. You were the quickest to respond, so I really appreciated that.
Great. Councilwoman Bryant Ward.
Hi, how are you? I'm Dr. Evelyn Bryant Ward. I am the councilwoman for Ward 3. For my full-time job, outside of this full-time job, I'm the Director of Operations for the ambulatory group with the University of Maryland Charles Regional, responsible for construction of new buildings, businesses, recruitment of physicians and staffing it, basically looking out for the needs of our community from a healthcare perspective. Super excited to be on this council. We have an amazing team. I simply enjoy what we are able to do together. The spirit that we share together, I'm excited about the next 4 years. So thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
And Councilman Jenkins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Lewis, thank you for being here tonight. I appreciate the opportunity to meet with you and also your interest in Senator Cardin's interest in La Plata in particular. I'm a longtime resident of La Plata since '86. I come from a urban planning, city planning, economic development background by education and work experience in both the public and private sector. I also was in the U.S. Army and the Maryland Army National Guard for 38 years. And I'm very pleased to be part of a team. I think as Councilman Bryant Ward indicated, I think it's important that I felt the need to be part of a team that hopefully can push and continue to push La Plata forward. So again, thank you for your opportunity to be here, and we certainly look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.
And Roderick, I know that we've met, but just so I will be on the record as well. This is my second term as mayor. I learned quite a bit from the first time I was sworn in 2017. I have, as I said, we have an amazing council that brings from all different aspects, from one that is raising a young family to one that has grandkids and 3 military members. So, I mean, I love that. And they all have come from different perspective, different energies. So as Matt said, we are getting along right now. So we hope that continues for another 3.5 years. When I'm not governing, I actually teach at 2 different colleges. I teach at UMGC and enjoy that. I teach a professional career enrichment class, and then I teach at Eastern Gateway Community College. I teach right now I have 100 college students I'm teaching communications to online, so they're out of Steubenville. And that one's enough to keep me a little bit busy and a little bit out of trouble. So we are so passionate right now about moving La Plata forward and bringing in the amenities that we so desire and have not been able to achieve yet. We had an amazing conversation today with a organization called the the Neighborhood Design Center, and they are helping us create a campus for our Dorchester Community Center. Now, truth be told, when I first met Congressman Hoyer, he said, Mayor James, is there anything that I can do for you? And I so boldly shook his hand and said, I need $10 million for a community center. That was our first meeting. I think I was in office 2 weeks. I have not gotten that $10 million. So I'm going to ask, a more achievable goal from Senator Cardin, but we do have so many great things. And I think the one thing that we lack the most of is not ambition or energy. We lack personnel. And once we get somebody in a role for an economic development director, I think that this town is just going to explode. So that's what we're working towards. But don't you have any doubts that I am going to sit here with our treasurer, so Kevin, be prepared, that we are going to find out how Senator Cardin can be part of La Plata. We're going to give him the opportunity to put his name here, and I know that he would not want to forego that opportunity. So we will be asking for something. I just don't know what, but I would love to meet with Mr. Thomas too, to see so that we have the guidelines that we need to follow. So we do it right the first time. I'm sure Kevin knows how to do it. And that we can just make our town even better. Councilwoman Bryant Ward.
Mr. Lewis, where do we find the earmark guide for 2023? Where do we find that document?
I believe it may just be an internal document at this point that members of my office have been sharing with
Oh.
individuals in your position and others. But I'll email that PDF. Currently, I only have Mayor James and Mr. Manuel email. So I email it to them too, and hopefully they can forward it out to you all. There's actually two. There's one for county and municipalities, and then there's another one for nonprofit entities. So if there's any nonprofits in Charles County or La Plata specifically that you know that could benefit from some extra funding, feel free to share it with them. We want as many requests as we can get, so we're working hard to get those approved.
That's wonderful. So, Council, this is your opportunity to ask Mr. Lewis any questions that you may have. Anything that you have that you'd like to ask? Go ahead, Dave.
Mr. Lewis, real quick, I know you're going to be sending us the guidelines, and you mentioned earlier it should be basically a 1-year type of a funding request. Could you just briefly, what types of projects or entities would be eligible for these types of funding?
Right. Kind of how my coworker explained it last week when we met with Dr. Bridget in St. Mary's County, is that if there's a project that the town has already kind of started, maybe they've already paid for the feasibility study and they're now moving on to the next part of the process, and they're just looking to secure that last bit of funding to complete the project. That'd be a good project to see if we can get earmark request funding for. If you're in the beginning stages of a project, particularly a project that's going to require multi-years of funding, that is not a good earmark request. Does that make sense?
Yes, I understand. Thank you for the clarification.
And if I could expand upon that a little bit, hopefully when you meet with Mike, Mayor James, he kind of explains this in greater details. But sometimes what the earmarks are able to do, they're able to free up certain parts of your budget. So once you figure out what qualifies for the earmark funding, you can, put those projects in line for earmark funding, and then free up other funds to go to other community initiatives that you guys are working on that won't qualify for earmark funding. And that's kind of the conversation that's kind of being done in St. Mary's County, and hopefully they can free up some of the funds that they've already earmarked for specific projects that can require federal appropriation funds for.
What is a reasonable request amount?
That's a good question. I don't think I have a good answer for you. Mike would.
Good. I'll ask him that.
Call, but I don't have it. I think that was a question that was asked by Dr. Bridget, and I didn't retain that knowledge.
And, I sat on a YMCA exploratory board out in Illinois to see if it was a good fit for the area, which it ended up being. So I kind of know, and that was back in the early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
So I know how expensive a YMCA is. So as you said, St. Mary's requested funding for that. They couldn't have, well, maybe they did. Maybe
They're in the process. They haven't submitted the request yet.
Oh, that's going to be interesting. In fact, when I moved here 20 years ago, this was our 4-year tour military, which turned out to be 20 years. The first thing that I did was try to get a YMCA down here in Charles County, because in my opinion, I think that it would be, it's needed down here. It would really be used, and they denied it real quickly. And I wasn't quite sure why they did when I had other partners working with us, but it's good. I love to hear that St. Mary's is pursuing that, because the one up in Fort Washington for some reason failed. How does a YMCA fail? And that was, I was surprised to see that, because I thought that was a good central location right there on 210. But obviously there are certain, it wasn't being utilized, or maybe it wasn't being managed correctly, but that one failed. So it's good to hear St. Mary's is doing that.
Yeah, I haven't heard about the Fort Washington one, but I met with Mr. Robbie Little, who's kind of leading the Chesapeake YMCA. I think there's 12 or 13 of them on the eastern shore of Maryland. And he said they've been running fine for many, many years.
Yeah.
But he's been having trouble with getting one on this side of Maryland.
It's right there. So you're familiar with 210.
Yep.
And it was, it's not where the Giant is. Right now, when you drive up there, I think it's a gym now. It's on the left-hand side going up 210. It used to be a huge YMCA. And then it changed over to, I think it's a gym now, and I'm not sure. I haven't driven up there lately or paid attention, but that's where it was. It was in more of a shopping center. So I was surprised about that. What other questions do you have for Roderick? Has Senator Cardin filed for re-election yet?
Not to my knowledge. I'm keeping track of it. I want to know how long I have a job
I
for,
know,
so to speak.
I know. If not, we'll have you come down here. We'll find you a job down here. But yeah, we're watching that closely too. He has been wonderful. He's always been, his door has always been open, and you know, with your predecessor, she was incredible too. So I'm just looking forward to all of us being able to have our meetings in person and being able to network again, because it's just so important to do that. And it's all about the conversation. That I am so thankful that you had reached out to us and said, Mayor James, I want to meet everyone, because just this information that you sent us. I know Kelly Phipps is listening and her wheels are rolling. I'm sure tomorrow I'm going to have to take a deep breath, because she has already spent the money 10 times over. She's got some great ideas as well. So I thank you so much. And I look forward to having you at some of our events, and looking forward to working with you. But I will contact Mike and invite council, whoever wants to be there, so that we can have a great conversation with him.
Sure, I'll facilitate a conversation between you two.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And thank you for driving down there. Safe travels back. And I'm glad that you got to meet at least Kelly, Brent, and Kevin in person. So that's good.
Yes, yes.
They're the real brains behind this whole organization. So thank you, Roderick. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mary James and Town Council.
All right, take care. All right, next on the agenda is a presentation from the chief. I think so. See, look at that. Doesn't that look sad that it's just empty right there? It should be us. Okay, soon enough. All right, Chief, are you ready?
I am. I appreciate the council taking a few minutes, and I'll be as brief as I can. To hear a little bit about law enforcement accreditation, why it's important to the La Plata Police Department, what it does for us, and what it does for our community. Miss Jackie DeSoto, our compliance coordinator, is on the call tonight. She is the brains of the police department. She keeps me straight. She keeps me going in the direction that I should. So I'm asking her to jump in at any time and make comments. I apologize, I have no video tonight. I'm guessing I need to do an update, but my beard is only 7 days and it doesn't look all that good for No Shave November. So I'm glad maybe I don't have the video. On July 28, 2018, the La Plata Police Department became the smallest nationally accredited police department in the state of Maryland. And Mayor, you were in Grand Rapids, Michigan with us when we were awarded that. Currently, the La Plata Police Department is one of 32 agencies nationwide with fewer than 25 sworn personnel that is accredited through the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies, something that we're very proud of. Some key dates are coming up for us, and that's really why we wanted to have this presentation now. We have our 4th year off-site review of our written directives and our proofs of compliance, and that is February 18th through the 26th. We are hoping that in March the 28th through 30th, our on-site assessment, where a team will come in and conduct an assessment we'll talk about in a little bit, that they'll be here in person and not a virtual style meeting or a virtual style assessment. And then July 20th through the 23rd, 2022 is the conference hearing in Chicago. And as I said during our first conference hearing, both the mayor and Danielle joined us in Grand Rapids and sat through the hearing. Got to watch the chief sweat a lot as we were asked questions about our report. CALEA was founded in 1979 by the four major law enforcement executive associations, the International Association of the Chiefs of Police, the National Sheriff's Association, the National Organization for Black Law Enforcement Executives, and the Police Executive Research Forum. It has a 21-member commission, and it's made up of 11 law enforcement practitioners from around the nation who represent accredited agencies of various size. And the balance of the commissioners are selected from public and private sectors. Generally, the commission reflects a representation from local, state, and CALEA is international, so there are providential leadership as part of the commission leadership. And they come from public safety organizations, businesses, academia. There is a Supreme Court justice from one of the states that is a commissioner. And there's also local government officials. There's mayors and council people who sit on the commission. Those who sit on the commission are appointed to 3-year terms, and they're there without compensation. So as we kind of get into the meats and potatoes of our presentation, Jackie, please feel free to talk about what you do. This is really your ball of wax. You there, Jackie? Maybe she's shy.
Yes. No, I'm here. Sorry, had to get my mouse to unmute.
No problem. When we first started in the accreditation process, we had to file an application to show that we were either a state, county, or municipal chartered government agency. They accepted our application. So we moved into something called self-assessment. And actually, we're always in a perpetual state of self-assessment. The commission meets 3 times a year, and they add, they delete, and they wordsmith standards. Individuals like Jackie are responsible to look at the updates that come out and help us do policy adjustments, wordsmith our policies to make sure we're reflecting the standards set forth by the commission, and then to make sure we have proofs of compliance to show that we're not only talking the talk, but walking the walk. So we may have something in policy, whatever that might be, and then Jackie has to find a proof of compliance to demonstrate to the commission that we are in compliance, and there has to be a proof of compliance, at least one for every year. Annually, Ms. DeSoto reaches out to seasoned accreditation managers throughout the state to have a mock assessment. And Jackie, we just went through a mock assessment. Do you want to kind of go over what we do and how it works?
Certainly. So we are CALEA accredited, and since CALEA spans regionally and nationally and a little bit internationally, we all form collective groups to work with each other as law enforcement agencies and share what information we have with each other, what ideas work, what policies work. And so we reference this as a PAC. So our PAC is a CALEA. So it's the Chesapeake Regional Law Enforcement Agencies PAC. And so what we do is we communicate with the members, those accreditation managers from all sorts of different law enforcement agencies. We reach out to them and we ask them to actually dive into our assessment, review all of our files, and tell us what their thoughts are. So by gaining that outside perspective, having somebody else from a different agency look to see what our policies look like, what sort of proofs we're putting in there, do all of our files match what we're saying that we're doing with CALEA, we're having somebody else check over our work, make sure that it's up to snuff. They catch things that we don't always think about, and they offer suggestions that have worked for their agency as well. They make sure all of our policies sound good, are easy to understand, and aren't going to be misinterpreted by another individual who's coming to look through our files for the CALEA accreditation. So what we do is we generally send out an email, we provide access to our files, we give everyone a week or two to review them, and we assign it, since there are so many different files to look at. We assign maybe 5 or 10, depending on the number of people we have to volunteer to look at the files. And then we get their feedback. They write notes. Sometimes we do, not since COVID, but sometimes we do in-person meetings where everybody gets together and we just discuss what we found and what we can improve on. And that's pretty much the mock process.
There's an old saying in Kalia, it's better to have your friends tell you that your baby's ugly than somebody from the outside. So that is one of the things that we really cling to, is we really depend on our allied law enforcement partners to come in and give us a really hard look. And we look at their suggestions, and if it works for us, and we have a discussion as a group in-house, if it works for us, that's great, and we adopt it. If not, we'll just move forward and see how it goes throughout the assessment. All right.
Chief, can I add one thing before we move on?
Absolutely.
So I noticed that on the previous slide in the self-assessment period, we forgot to mention the importance of our time-sensitive standards, and those generally focus on training requirements and things of that nature, where you're constantly improving your officers, making sure that they're getting trained up on and doing refresher training on all of their different skills, which in the law enforcement field is very important, but also very difficult to coordinate, considering we want our officers on the road, we want them patrolling, we want them actively engaged in the community. So that's one of the most important and one of the most difficult parts of the self-assessment period, is getting that timing down.
Very good point. And time-sensitive standards, once the time frame goes by, you can't get those back, and that leads into bad things in CALEA as far as non-compliance or whatnot. Annually, as we kind of talked about earlier, a compliance service manager from CALEA comes in and reviews 25% of our files, looking at our written directives and our proofs of compliance and some of our time-sensitive standards, and they provide us feedback as ways we can better meet law enforcement's best practices. And a lot of the time-sensitive standards, as Jackie was talking about, not only apply to officers, but to all employees. One of the standards is interacting with people with mental health issues. Our officers get specially trained for that annually. It's required by CALEA, but all our employees do, the one taking the phone call, the one handling the person in the lobby. Other kind of time-sensitive things are annual reports. We prepare a very detailed and comprehensive annual use of force analysis. We actually call it response to resistance, a pursuit analysis, a bias-based profiling analysis, a grievance analysis, and so on. And those make us better. They make us stronger. It makes us go back and look at our, not only our policies, but our equipment, our training, and other things that in the long run will make us a better agency. And by being a better agency, we serve our community better. Then we have the site-based assessment. A certified CALEA team leader, it's usually a police chief with experience at an accredited agency, who's specially trained, comes in and does an assessment with another assessor. For our size agency, it's a 3-day on-site assessment. The team select now, because all your files will be reviewed beforehand by a compliance service manager, the team selects 5 to 6 areas of focus, and they conduct interviews. On a recent on-site I did for the Palm Beach Gardens, Florida Police Department, the focus interviews included selection and hiring, training with an emphasis on use of force, their communication center, traffic enforcement, and community interaction. During the 3 days that the team is there, they'll interview everybody associated with those focus areas, both in-house and outside. And then they'll hold a 2-hour public call-in session where members of the community or the agency can call in, be anonymous, and they can speak to an assessment team member. They also hold a public hearing, and they accept public comment. All these are well advertised on social media and in various other media outlets. The team also interviews key stakeholders, including elected officials, town management, local business leaders, HOA presidents, labor leaders, and faith-based leaders. They participate in ride-alongs with our staff, and then they prepare a detailed report about their experience in La Plata. After that is the commission hearing. That's where the mayor joined us, and we get to sit in a room and sit across from 3 or 4 commissioners. They have our report. They've been able to read it, and then they ask questions. They ask questions about our strong points, and they ask questions about where areas we need to improve. And the results of that are really 3 things can happen. You're either accredited for initial or reaccredited, or you're accredited or reaccredited with conditions and a revisit. You really want to stay away from that. And then if you don't meet standards and you have too many non-compliance issues, then you're not accredited and you've done a lot of work, but you got to go back to the drawing board. And that's the only way that this process holds its credibility. And when you go to any hearing, there's between 100 and 130 candidate agencies. Several of them will not be accredited, and more than several, will be reaccredited with conditions and a revisit where they come back and take a look at your weak points and make sure that you have corrected that. And we welcome that. I can't think of being a police department in these days and not having somebody from the outside come in and tell us how we can do business better, especially people who are trained to do it. And then we go right back to self-assessment, and that's where Jackie keeps us honest for the next 4 years. We go through the exact same process over and over again. And as we've seen in policing, things are changing all the time. And that's one of the things is we kind of, I'll get to that in a minute. Currently, there's 2 types of accreditation. There's basic accreditation. It's 189 core standards. And there's advanced accreditation, which is 459 standards. Each standard has commentary, as you see, or each standard has a statement. And in this particular one, it says a written directive governs procedures for assuring compliance with all applicable constitutional requirements, including, and this is talking about field interviews and regular interviews. When we interview somebody, making sure that we operate within the 4 corners of the Constitution, whether they're in an interview room or we're interviewing them on the street during interrogations, and then guaranteeing people have the right to counsel when they ask for it. So in each one of these, we have to have a written policy, and then we have to have proofs of compliance. And recently we had a DUI stop where an individual wanted to talk to counsel before they agreed whether or not to take a breathalyzer test. It's absolutely fine. And we allowed them to make that phone call. So those are kind of how the standards work. And I just kind of wanted to shift gears here right now, and I'll give Jackie a moment to make any comments on things I might have missed, and talk just a little bit about the police reform that we've seen in Maryland and how accredited agencies were ahead of the curve, and states like Connecticut and Missouri, where instead of having a bunch of police reform, they have mandated that you become accredited by a certain period of time, or you're not eligible thing for like state grants and other sorts of incentives. So Jackie, I'm sure I missed a lot, but anything else you want to talk about?
Chief, I think you hit most of the key points, and I think for someone who doesn't necessarily do CALEA work every single day, that summarizes the gist of what we do. Just a quick comment on the way some of the standards are formatted. While it does say we have a written directive that governs procedures for assuring compliance, that's referencing our policies and procedures. In case council wasn't aware, I know there's some specific language that, again, if you don't do this every day, you might not know specifically what it's addressing. We also have different types of standards, conditional standards as well, where you really have to pay attention to the language. So it's one thing to prove what they're asking for specifically in here, but it's another thing to make sure that you're addressing the right types of proofs. You want to make sure that you're fully meeting what they're asking for and not assuming that they're referencing something else. So sometimes the language of the standards can be a bit tricky, and you have to make sure you double check what exactly they're asking for.
Thanks, Jackie. So I just wanted to highlight a couple standards, and then I'll let we'll be done, and you can ask any questions you might have, and then move on with the rest of the meeting. But this commentary. One of the things that they talked about a lot in Annapolis this year was ethics and ethics training. We have a canon code of ethics, not only for our sworn personnel, but also for our civilian personnel. We have ethics training every other year, but I think as an agency, we do it every year, some way, somehow. And Jackie knows my favorite book on this is something called Cowboy Ethics. So when you're out and about and you see a La Plata police officer or one of our employees, you ask them what it means to be riding for the brand. If they can't tell you, you let me know, and they're going into remedial training. But we do talk ethics a lot, and it's important. Alternatives to arrest was a hot topic in Annapolis. CALEA's had this standard for decades, talking about when you should issue criminal citations instead of doing an on-view arrest. And there's also standards on discretion, whether you're going to issue a warning or a citation. As I showed the council in the last business meeting, we have about a 30-70 citation warning ratio. I think our officers show great discretion out on the road. Bias-based policing. Every year, our agency has prepared a detailed and comprehensive analysis of who we're stopping, why we're stopping them, who's getting tickets, who's getting warnings, and we take a look at it. We provide bias-based training, and it's a way that we try to make sure that we're living up to treating everybody in our community fairly. Duty to intervene. This is something that was talked about in Annapolis. We have a policy on it, and it's not only for sworn, it's for all employees. Again, this was something that was a hot topic in Annapolis this past year. CALEA accredited agencies were ahead, and all the things that some people are scrambling to put policies together, we're sharing those with them. Reasonable force and use of deadly force. All our policies reflect United States Supreme Court cases. And on our high liability policies, one of the things that we do is once we prepare our written directives or we wordsmith them, not only are they reviewed by CALEA assessors, we also send them out to a attorney, and that's all she does. She specializes in police best practice policies, and we get her opinion. If you spend a little money on the front end, and it's not expensive the way we do it, it stops you from spending a lot of money on the back end. And then we train to these policies. Another hot topic in Annapolis was rendering aid after use of force. CALEA has had this standard for decades. And in our use of force or response to resistance reports, there's a specific section that officers must report any sort of first aid that they provided to someone who they've used force against. Things like lateral neck restraints and chokeholds. We have had policies in place for years before it was fashionable in Annapolis to talk about it. Our use of force analysis, as I said earlier, is very comprehensive. And when we get done preparing these analyses in January, we'll be happy to share them with the council. We do not mind making them public. They should be public documents. Complaints, again, this is a standard that CALEA has had in place for decades, that we must accept anonymous complaints. They require us to have a solid recruitment plan. We review that every year, and we have to show that we're following the plan in order to recruit the best personnel that we can. Annual training, as the council hears us each month, we do a lot of annual training. We do a lot of training, and again, well-trained employees make better decisions and are less likely to be injured doing their job. So that's important to us. In police reform, they talked about early warning systems, early identification systems. I really want to thank the town, Mr. Manuel, Michelle, and the mayor and the previous council for stepping up and bringing on a better employee assistance program that had more fingers to it. So when we have that employee, no matter where they're working in the town, we can refer them there and know that they're going to get some sort of help, or at least some really good referrals. So again, this is decades old for CALEA, but in certain states, it's just now becoming mandatory to police agencies. Mental health issues, we've had policies. We do lots of training on how we interact with individuals with mental health issues. There's pre-employment academy training that must take place. That's why we're very particular about the police academies that we use. And then we annually have some sort of training. One of the great things that I think is our partnership with Pathfinders for Autism. They have been great to come down, do training with our officers when you interact with people with special needs on exactly how we should do that and how we can prevent conflict. Show-ups, that's when there's a crime that goes down and a half an hour later you find somebody matching that description a half mile away. Again, this is a decade-old standard for CALEA, but again, this was something that's been in Annapolis the last couple years. Demanding agencies have policies on it. We've had it for, well, since my tenure here. And these are important policies to have. One of the good things about CALEA is that group of commissioners, they have a broad part of expertise. And they bring that when we discuss standards. And they also bring in people like the Innocence Project, and they help CALEA format this show-up policy. So no matter what it is, whether it's license plate readers and the ACLU, CALEA helps us determine best practices, and they bring in every side of the conversation to make sure that what we're doing is within the four corners of the Constitution and is a best practice in law enforcement. And I'm not going to just keep this going, but they have standards on juvenile offenders, how you handle them. We operate underneath those standards. Here's some numbers that you might find interesting. There are approximately 18,000 law enforcement agencies in the United States. Approximately 1,000 are accredited through CALEA. One of the things I like about working in Charles County is the Sheriff's Department, the La Plata Police Department, the State Police, and the Transit Authority are all accredited agencies. So to me, that speaks volumes to the dedication of local law enforcement. There are currently 34 accredited agencies in Maryland, with 3 others in self-assessment. A lot of people ask why we do this. CALEA lists the 4 top reasons to be accredited. It reduces risk and liability exposure. It provides a greater accountability within the agency. It provides for a stronger defense against civil suits. And it typically provides elected officials the reason to stand by and support their police departments because they know they're living up to best practices. And just as a point of information, Maryland House Bill 216 requires law enforcement agencies to place their written directives on for public view. Ours is on the town's website. We do not have our written directives on how we respond to barricades or bank robberies. We don't have to post those. We don't want to make that known to folks. But everything else is out there for public view. And I think transparency is key with the community more than it's ever been. So Jackie, if you have anything else, that's my presentation. And Jackie and I are here to answer any questions. And with Jackie being the guru as far as how we do it in La Plata, I've served as a CALEA team leader for the last 15 years, and I've assessed 40 agencies nationwide. So the guys and gals at the station don't like it when I do one because I come back with all sorts of ideas. Jackie?
Chief, I think you have summed up CALEA fairly nicely. I mean, you have that experience as being an assessor through CALEA, so you have that other perspective. So I think it's very educational when you describe CALEA and its practices. So I think you've pretty much covered the majority of everything.
Well, thank you. And we don't get to thank our employees, especially civilian employees, publicly too often, but I really appreciate Jackie and the hard work that she does for this community every day. She's an extra mile employee, and she's just a joy to have around our station.
Thank you, Chief. I see Councilwoman Bryant Ward. You have your hand raised.
I do. Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Jackie, for the information. Just a question. So I currently have a new endoscopy center, and I have to do the accreditation as well, and you get, reaccredited. Is this a reaccreditation? Is this your first reaccreditation?
It is. This will be our first reaccreditation. We were accredited in 2018,
Right.
and there's some grace that goes into initial accreditations. When I'm out in the field as a team leader, I call them implied grace. On the first one, on the second one, that you don't get it. You better make sure the rubber meets the road on every standard all the way through. But I'm sure you understand how important this is, and the tough work that Jackie has to make sure we stay compliant.
Absolutely. And one other thing, you mentioned best practices. And so when we went through the process, one of the things that stood out in my mind, that these are things that we should be doing. We're doing, making sure, maintaining our medications, making sure that they're sealed, they're kept, they're under lock and key. Those things are just a part of our process. So as you go through your day-to-day and everything, you are maintaining those best practices. So the preparation for the accreditation, was that difficult for you, or because you're doing it every day, it is a best practice, you're finding that it's not as much work?
I think the first time through, it was a lot of work. Mm-hmm. And then once we kind of picked up on what we needed to do, and it's become, I won't say second nature, but it's heading in that direction. One of the things I think about is evidence. We had never done a purge before as an agency. The solution was to add more shelving, and your room's only so big. So that's one of the things that we've been working through, but making sure those things, that guns and drugs and money, they have extra layers of security, and that our guns get over to the county to get test fired. It makes us a better agency. It makes us more accountable to our community. And I think the thing that really sells me on it is these are things every chief knows they should do, or every sheriff. But Kalia keeps you honest because you got somebody coming in behind you to take a look.
And then my last question is, which standard do we currently have? Is it the 189 or the 459?
Because of staffing, we're at the 189 core standards. We would love to do the 459, but maybe next time through. But I leave that up to Jackie with her workload, with all the other things she's responsible for.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
One comment to add to that with the standards, between the core standards and then the advanced accreditation. Some of the more advanced accreditation standards are not particularly applicable to our agency, like Chief had mentioned, what with personnel and staffing and just the general size of the agency and what different departments we have. One such example is we do not have a canine division. So all of those standards pertaining to training and taking care of the animals and things of that nature are not applicable to us, which is why we are focusing mostly on those core standards instead of the advanced accreditation, since there are just so many that will not apply to our agency due to the size.
Thank you, Jackie, for the clarification. That makes perfect sense.
Thank you. Councilman Jenkins?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Chief and Mr. Soto, thank you very much for making this presentation very timely, very educational. You answered one of my questions in terms of how does these standards interact, or how is their reaction from recent legislation in Annapolis. So you answered that question for me, at least. And just, I guess, two other comments. The continued emphasis on mental health training and intervention obviously is going to be an issue. So I'm heartened to see that. Also, frankly, the transparency is needed, and I hope there was some way that perhaps there's a more opportunity for us to shine a light on the fact that your agency meets these standards, it has met it, and now going through the process again. I think that's critically important today that we that's known in the community that we serve. So thanks again. This was a very timely and very educational presentation, and frankly, from a personal point of view, it certainly rings true, as I'm sure the mayor knows, and of course, Councilman Goldsmith and I are attending the Sheriff's Citizens Police Academy. So this is rings true, and there's a lot of similarity and a lot of connection here. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks for those comments. Councilman Trollinger or Councilman Goldsmith, do you have anything that you'd like to add before I ask a couple questions?
Just not a question, just encouragement. Like Councilman Jenkins stated, I think it's great to know that you all are held accountable by your own standards and by a national accreditation agency, because we can know that some of the tragedies that can happen in a moment's notice, we're better prepared to avoid those from the start because of the way that you have the outlook on policing as a whole, not just community policing, but just looking at every avenue as a potential positive interaction, even when things are pretty bad. So I appreciate the consistent focus on education within our police department. So it's a source of pride for our town. So thank you for putting in the hard work, both you, Chief, and Jackie, and all your officers. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Excellent. Councilman Goldsmith, would you like to say anything, or I'll go into my questions if you don't. All right. So I think I hear you on mic. Jim, do you have anything that you want to add?
No, I have nothing I need to add.
Okay, fantastic.
Thank you.
Chief, are we still the smallest accredited in Maryland?
Yes, Mayor, we are.
All right, that's pretty cool. And I know that I think Officer Payne, Lieutenant Payne, was the one that was working on the CALEA before Jackie came in. Is that correct?
That's correct, and he's still a big part of it. But we brought Jackie on as a compliance coordinator to take a little workload off of Lieutenant Payne, and then kind of build in that expertise to have it within the agency.
So what I'm curious about is Jackie doesn't have any background for law enforcement before being hired here, correct?
No, that's correct.
So her eyes, this is what I love about it, she's coming in with very fresh eyes, whereas, sometimes when we are within the field, we see things and can justify why it's that way, where I think Jackie, just knowing her for a little bit, is by the book and sees things from a different perspective. She sees it very much as the written word. So have you seen a difference between, having someone that's a civilian doing the accreditation process versus an officer doing the accreditation process?
I have, and Jackie brings a great, unique, especially with her legal background, having worked at a law office. She can look at a standard. Now, a lot of times I say it's like whatever it is, 7th grade English. You have to dissect it before you know what they're asking, and so many agencies miss things, and Jackie doesn't miss it. I mean, things that I catch, seasoned accreditation. I won't say catch, but the standard wasn't quite met when I do some of these assessments across the country. I can throw it at Jackie, and she picks up on it right away. And yeah, she does. And Jackie, I'll defer to you about how you see things. But one of the things that stands out to me is, especially when we get close to one of our off-site reviews, we meet on a regular basis for an hour or so, and we just go standard by standard, and we talk things through. And the first time through, Jackie listens, and now she's the one doing the talking, and I'm the one sitting back going, yeah, you're right. Very good. So, Jackie?
Thank you for that, Chief. As you mentioned, I do have a background. I used to work in a law office. I was a legal secretary doing quasi-paralegal work, preparing most of the legal documents. So I have become accustomed to really dissecting documents, paying attention to language and what exactly the document might actually be addressing. So that's really come in handy, like Chief said, when having to pay attention to the language of the standards and what they're actually asking for versus what we're presenting in our proofs. Do our proofs fully meet the essence of what they want us to show them? And so that's really come in handy. I also went to school for criminal justice, so I have always sort of been prepped to look at things through the law enforcement and legal perspective, which has really helped, again, with doing the CALEA process, since I've already thought about officer perception as well as what is the citizen perception and how that's really forming our community. So
that is great. And, you know, we are quite fortunate, Jackie, to have you there, not only for the CALEA aspect, but to keep those fine officers in line. So I greatly appreciate all of your efforts there down at the police station. And thank you, Chief, for presenting this to us. And we wish you all the best of luck in getting accredited again. I can't wait to, hopefully we'll be able to attend. And it's in Chicago, right, in July?
Yeah, I think it's the 23rd through the 26th in Chicago. Yeah, and hopefully it'll be in person. We're all going to go to Harry Carey Steakhouse and celebrate.
That would be awesome. Well, thank you very much. And Council, should you have any other questions that you think of afterwards, please feel free to email the chief. Thank you, guys.
Mayor, one last thing.
Yeah.
We talked about mental health. We are still waiting for the announcement on the cops hiring grant that was supposed to be made on September 30th.
Yeah.
I did correspond with Dr. Abney today, and we're in limbo, but as soon as we know, we will make sure the council knows whether we get that grant position or not. But that'll bring another level of service to a special needs community in the town.
Fantastic. I think that is so needed. And thank you for pursuing that. That's great. Okay, moving along to our next item, town council meeting schedule. I hope that you all have had the opportunity to look at that. Brent, do you need to say anything about this?
I do not. I think I did notice something that we may want to clarify. Let me pull up. Yeah, the business meeting is scheduled for the shows it is the 27th, of course, which is the week between Christmas and New Year's. And I'm not sure, Michelle did a lot of work on this, if that should be the 20th.
I looked at that too, and I have that down as one of my questions too. So I do agree it probably should be the 20th versus the 27th.
Yeah, and just to make note, the June, because of the MML conference, we're looking at one work session and the business meeting also would be something that was sort of deviates from our typical schedule. And I believe that maybe the MML conference was adjusted because of primaries.
That's correct. And then in November, we have an alternate schedule because the elections, so we'll be going on Monday instead of a Tuesday because the elections are on Tuesday, November 8th. And that's why we're on Monday. Does anybody else see anything? The only other, I don't know if it's a correction to maybe update an email. Do we still want it to be sent to Danielle or should it be sent to Michelle, Craig, Kelly, you?
The motley crew.
So that's just something that I don't know, you know, if Danielle will still be handling that, but in her absence, should it be updated to somebody else?
Yeah, we probably need just a general mailbox.
Yeah.
Could be linked to someone's individual account or someone that would monitor. And I'm not sure, we may have that already, but need to set parameters with the IT. We can maybe make those amendments.
Okay. Did anybody else have any suggestions, corrections, additions, deletions? All right. Fantastic. Okay, brings us to our next one, which is the FY23 budget calendar. And right away, I have a question on the June 14th one. So if you go back to our calendar that we're going to adopt in June, we have June 7th and June 21st. And on our budget calendar, we have a special meeting for June 14th. Is that correct? Or should that be changed?
Mayor, I can change that to June 7th. I didn't realize we were having a council meeting on the 7th, so
Okay,
I'll make
good.
that correction.
Fantastic. I'll correct that. Council, do you have any other questions, concerns, comments? Wow. Oh, there you go, Dave. Go. I was gonna say, wow, you guys are quiet. Come on. Go ahead, Dave. Councilman Jenkins? I can read sign language.
Thank you. No, I have a delayed Wi-Fi here where I am. So
Okay.
Pardon me on unmuting. I just had a quick, I guess, a question for my own education here is, and I don't know whether it's out of line or not, but I'll ask it anyway. At what point do we as council members have some input in terms of budget items or things to consider to be put into the budget, not knowing necessarily what department or what silo it goes into?
Councilman Jenkins, we have an annual budget retreat.
Okay.
It's tentatively scheduled for Saturday, January 29th.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's sort of our meeting that really kicks off budget items, budget requests, and sort of a review of where the town is financially and where we see us going in the, immediate and sort of short-term future.
And then it's hopeful then that we'll have the two studies underway, at least some preliminary information in terms of the organizational study, and then the benefits and salary studies will be hopefully completed or available when we have that meeting in January.
Yeah, we're hopeful to have them complete both of them before the
Yeah.
budget retreat.
Okay, that would be very important, obviously, but just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
And Kevin, one of the other things that had come up before, and I think I'm going to kind of piggyback on what Councilman Jenkins says. We do have our strategic meeting, our budget retreat, I should say, our budget retreat in January. But one of the things that has been mentioned to me in the previous council, and I think that our council has heard it too, that when we get the budget that comes in front of us, we don't see what was originally put in there and then slashed by conversation and then brought to us. Is there a way that maybe we see the budget that came to you, how you amended it, and then the final one, what was cut or what was adjusted, so that we can understand that when each department comes up? Does that make sense?
It does, Mayor, and I can take that into consideration and sort of think about a way of presenting that.
Okay, and because then it kind of gets allows us to see from a different perspective. If I'm just going to say, because the chief just spoke, if the chief had asked for A, B, and C, and it was, it was cut and on the floor now, and we don't get to see A, B, and C, we can kind of get to feel their needs, their wants, and you may not, through the negotiating, it may not have been one of the top priorities, but at least it puts it in our mind.
Sure, I understand your point.
Fantastic, thank you. Any other comments on the budget schedule? Fantastic, just that one change to June 7th. Thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Brings us to our next item, which is the 2.5 amended civil emergency order. Do you want to kick it off, Brent?
Just trying to pull it up on my monitor. Okay, here we go. yeah, of course, this is the 30-day story. Because of state code, we are only allowed to extend these emergency provisions for a period of not to exceed 30 days. So we are back to re-review the provisions of the declaration of civil emergency that Kelly has brought up on the screen. Of course, the paragraph 7 gets into the period, as well as trying to find, I think it's paragraph 5 is the paragraph which I will read. In an effort to control and prevent the spread of COVID-19 within the town, it is recommended that in order to protect the citizens of the town of La Plata, the council of the town of La Plata is strongly recommending the donning of masks inside of any business, commercial establishment, restaurant, store, place of worship, or any other building open to and allowing entrance of the public. Of course, our current declaration is due to expire, I guess, on the 12th at, I believe, 11:59. So that's where we are. Entertain council comments on where council sees us going from here.
All right. Anybody have any comments? Councilwoman Bryant Ward.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have revisited this every month for the past several months. And just for the record, I think, Madam Mayor, that you would share why we are strongly recommending as opposed to making it a mandate. That's a question that I've gotten that's been asked of me from the public. And I think that if we would explain it, they would understand, the rationale behind this.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for that. And I intend on doing that, and I'll do it right now. So the reason why we have had it as strongly recommended, we are in a worldwide pandemic. That is undeniable. We are following the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC's recommended, their recommendation, and we're following the science. And they recommend that masks be worn. The reason why we are not mandating masks be worn is because we can't enforce the masks being worn. We don't have the manpower to do that. And we are leaving the final decision up to each and every person, what they feel comfortable with. And when they walk into a business, when they are indoors, it is up to the businesses to say that they, in the town of La Plata, that they require masks or they do not if you are fully vaccinated. And that is why it's purely not because we're trying to be defiant. It is because we cannot enforce a mandate. So it is, in my opinion, and it's only my opinion, irresponsible for us to mandate something that we cannot enforce. So questions from council, where we go from here. And here are our options, so I can lay this out. We can renew the civil state of emergency for another 30 days that we are recommending, strongly recommending the donning of masks. We can let this expire and put out through our PIO, we can put out the public information saying the town of La Plata strongly recommends the wearing of masks, the donning of masks through our social media, through our emails, but not make it a civil state of emergency. When the civil state of emergency originally began, it was, it protected us. And actually, when you declare a state of emergency, and Kevin, feel free to chime in, or Brent at any moment if I say this wrong, when this first started, it was, when you're declaring a state of emergency, then you could be the recipient of funds. If you don't declare a state of emergency, then you're not going to be the recipient of funds. And we did, and we still do know that there is a pandemic out there, and science does show that being vaccinated and or wearing masks helps. It helps flatten the curve, as it has been said so many times. So, is there a need to be a civil state of emergency? that's going to be up to council to decide. Sometimes when we overuse terms, it takes away its importance. So when we do have a state of emergency, a civil state of emergency that comes down the road, and people hear that we've used it so many times, maybe it loses its effectiveness. So I would love to hear from council what your thoughts are and where you think we should go from this. Anyone? All right, Councilman Jenkins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I had checked late last week on the Charles County Health Department, the latest stats as of last week for the in Charles County. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to look at the zip code 2046, but as I recall, Charles County is still in what they call a substantial area in terms of folks catching COVID. So we're not quite lowered in terms of meeting. We're still a little bit higher than what the state is in terms of their rate and rate of infection and those other issues. So I don't know what the latest one as of today, and I don't specifically know in terms of the zip code, but it still concerns me that we still are in this state of some kind of a pandemic. And then I certainly agree that we should follow the science. And frankly, I'm just personally unsure whether we may or may not have some kind of a surge again because we're entering the winter months. I don't think anybody knows that, and I'll say I certainly don't. So I'm generally would be in favor of continuing the current proclamation for state of emergency, or what was it called? That state of emergency.
Civil state of emergency.
Civil state of emergency. So I would consider extending it another 30 days.
Thank you for that. And I did look at the latest data for Charles County, and we, as of today, as of 3 a.m. this morning, they said that our case rate is 63 out of 100,000. We're 2.7% positivity, and that is actually a decrease of 2.2% over the last 7 days is what, so it is trending down. Montgomery County has vacated their mandate mask wearing. They are 50 out of 100,000, so they're just a little bit lower than we are, and they're considered moderate versus substantial. And Prince George's County is at 57 out of 100,000, and they're at 2.4%, and they're still considered substantial. So around us, you know, it fluctuates a bit. So those are the latest, greatest numbers. I thank you for your input, Councilman Trollinger, Councilman Goldsmith, Councilwoman Bryant Ward. What is your take on this moving forward?
I would
Sure,
recommend
so-
we just continue what we have right now.
You recommend, I'm sorry, Councilman Goldsmith?
I recommend we continue what we have right now.
Okay, thank you for that. And extend it for another 30 days is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. Councilman Trollinger?
So I think the current language that we have in place allows for individuals to be continued, to be encouraged to become vaccinated. I think if the vaccine works the way that we all believe that it does, that the mask versus non-mask, I think is not as much of an issue. But I'm looking at the map as far as the county by county numbers as to cases by county. And, you know, I get that our neighbors to the north are still in a very, very high rate of danger. But with that exception, I mean, it's, you know, I think everybody knows that if you're vaccinated, you are much safer than if you're not. And I think the way that we have it, as far as the businesses being able to decide whether they want to continue with masks within their own business, is the right way to go. I wouldn't advise anything stronger than that.
And Councilwoman Bryant Ward. Thank you, Councilman Trollinger.
Yeah, I'm fine with us continuing with the civil state of emergency. And the one comfort that I have is that the businesses took full ownership and they required masks. Much of our businesses in the town require masks, and even outside of our town into the county, they're requiring masks. So I think with that, my mask protects me against you, your mask protects you against me. And so therefore, if we're both masked, we protected, vaccine or no vaccine, we still run the risk of catching COVID. Not as severe, but we do run the risk. So I'm very comfortable with us continuing with the civil state of emergency.
Okay, so be it. So we will change the date for 30 days out at 11:59, Mr. Manuel, and we'll go from there.
Madam Mayor, do we need a motion?
I think we have
Or
a
not?
consensus.
I don't know.
And I think that we have a, Brent, I think we need to vote on this, don't we? Because it expires before our business meeting, yes?
Yes, I would recommend the motion.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so do I have a motion to extend the civil state of emergency for 30 days?
Madam Mayor, so moved.
And second? I see.
I second the motion.
Okay. Any comments? My one comment is I thank council for really digging into this and looking at this and doing what is in the best interest. I'm following the science, I should say, and doing what we need to do in order to protect our town. So we've got a motion and we've got a second. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. All right, that brings us to our next, which is an emergency ordinance. Oh, sorry. No, this one is the moratorium on enforcement of certain regulations in chapter, I have to put my glasses on, sorry, of certain regulations in chapter 181-36, allowed devices. That sounds like that is a Janine Harrington. Is that not?
Hello. Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Hello.
It's been a long day.
Yes, it has been.
So I don't know, Brent, do you need to introduce it or do you want me to explain what this is?
I think the mayor did a great job introducing it. I think she's trying to steal my job, but Janine, to explain, yes, please.
Yeah,
do.
okay. So for the temporary moratorium on enforcement of certain regulations under chapter 181-36, this is in reference to distracting devices that we currently have in our code. I discussed this with the town attorney based on a request from the La Plata Business Association. They have their Shop Small La Plata coming up on November 27th. And there is a business called Pop Culture, I believe, that is doing balloon arrangements and is offering them to the businesses at a very reduced price. So they were interested in promoting this, but obviously under our code, it's not very clear on this type of balloon arrangement. They have, under our code, you're allowed 7 balloons, which is considered one bunch on short strings that can be displayed for a 24-hour period before they have to come down. And so these are basically balloon arches that will be secured to the door of the business or the actual structure of the business, so they won't be flopping around. They won't be blowing necessarily like a balloon bunch would normally do. And so they are requesting that they be allowed for this one occasion. And after discussing with the town attorney, indicated that we would have to enforce a emergency ordinance for the temporary moratorium on certain enforcement regulations in order to allow this for a single day period. So within this document, it does allow for the balloons. However, it's limited to a 3-day period where the Friday before the 26th, they could be put up. The 27th, they'd be able to keep them up, and then the 28th, they would need to come down. This is just something that was a request of the Business Association, and so we were bringing it for the Town Council's consideration tonight.
Thank you for that. Before I open it up to council, I do have a concern because it came through in my email that they were selling these or selling it to the businesses already. Is that something, did I misread that?
So it would be sold to the businesses. I've made it, after discussing it with them, I did let them know that this is not going to be allowed on a permanent basis and that they would have to be taken down immediately and that they could not be maintained on the site. So they were aware of this. They said they agreed to it. So that would be on them if they want to spend the $50 to buy these balloon arches for a one-day event. That is their prerogative.
But I guess what I'm saying is that it's not allowed right now, and I guess it's already being, people are allowed to purchase it without approval. Is that?
So from what I understand, they could obviously put in an order for it, but the balloons would not be delivered until the Friday before that the 26th.
Okay, and how does, I know that Aaron is we're off on that Friday. We're like the collective we. You guys are off on that Friday. If it's not, my concern is, especially on Charles Street, where it is a busy during the Shop La Plata, which is awesome. There's a lot of traffic, that it is not secured to the archway. Is there a concern, or after speaking with the Business Association, do you have a concern about that? Or are you pretty confident that it is going to be pretty much secured the way it needs to be?
I'm pretty confident that it's going to be secured the way it needs to be. Aaron and myself are both available if we need to go out and do on-site inspections on Friday, and of course on Sunday and Monday if it's an emergency situation. We are both available. So it's something to keep in mind that we can certainly enforce that. I've told the Business Association that I'm strongly recommending that they enforce the businesses that they are encouraging to buy these balloon arches. To work with us, and they agreed to do that. So hopefully that comes true.
I think it's a neat idea, and that it will bring a lot of color and vibrancy to the event, but I'm just concerned about it distracting on Charles Street. Council, any questions, comments, concerns that Ms. Harrington can answer? Councilwoman Bryant Ward.
Yeah, thank you, Director Harrington. You know, my concern is that, I mean, not having the balloons would not impact the success of, you know, Shop Small. And if we make this exception, then what stops us from having to make another exception? And if we do make refuse to make an exception when another issue comes about, then are we in any way setting ourselves up for discrimination? And so, you know, that just brings a concern to me. You know, there's nothing about this that would impact their ability to be successful in the shopping. This is something they want to do. And I just think we have to be mindful of that going forward, because when the next business owner decides they want to put up something that is not in the code and we say no, how do we justify that? So that's a concern for me. I think that we put these requirements in place for a reason, and we have to honor them. There's no life or death issue with not having balloons on an arch. And to, you know, put an emergency ordinance in place, you know, for aesthetics makes no sense to me. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Thank you for that. Councilman Jenkins, Trollinger, or Goldsmith, what is your take on this?
I think Councilperson Bryant Ward, council member, makes a great point because in previous years, and I've had some personal experience, we had a big brouhaha a number of years ago about balloons. I mean, it was painful in many respects, both personally and professionally. So, and I'll just leave it at that. So, I do share her concern about precedent, but the same token, I also want to, at least for me, I guess, want to make sure, or at least understand that we want to work with the business association, but at the same token, at times we just need to look at the larger picture here. And there is, and the issue you raised, Mayor, about them being secure. There is a level of trust here, and so I guess I have a lot of mixed feelings about that to a degree. I mean, I understand it is Small Business Week or day or weekend, and that's important, but I'm just not convinced per se that having balloons or not having balloons is going to make or break their success that particular weekend. So I'm kind of on the fence on this.
All right, Councilman Trollinger or Councilman Goldsmith?
Yeah, I understand the concerns. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
I understand the concerns expressed by both Councilman Bryant Ward and Councilman Jenkins. I look upon this as this is a one-time thing, and I hope it should be emphasized. This is a one-time thing, just because of the Shop La Play today, and that we're willing to cooperate with the business association. We've had periods of time where we've not had a good working relationship. They have made a request of us. I think we should support it for this one time, and no expectations that in the future that it would take place again.
Thank you for that. Councilman Trollinger.
I'm not anti-balloons. I think that where there is an opportunity for our businesses to express themselves in a safe and albeit very temporary way. I know we have a lot of restrictions in town to make sure for quality control and the way our streets look and the way our facades look. But I think for a one-day event, understanding the concern about setting a precedent, but as Councilman Goldsmith indicated, for a one-time event, and if the balloons are a disaster, again, personally or professionally, as Councilman Jenkins indicated, that we don't have to do it again, and they've lost some trust there. But I think that for this moment, we should allow them to draw attention to their businesses other than just a Facebook post or a social media post. It's not going to be a driving distraction. I think it should be fine. So I support it.
Councilwoman Bryant Ward.
I don't think, if we're saying that it's a one-time precedence, but when the next business owner, for whatever reason, decides to act something similar that requires some modification, it will not be a one-time only, because now we would be looking at discrimination. If they ask for something that we can make an exception on, then we would be required to make that exception. And so it's not a one-time only. It's them asking this the first time, but again, we're setting it up where somebody else comes along and they want to do something that's not within the code. We would have to consider that. So at what point do we put an end to the consideration of the one-time onlys? I am not against the businesses at all. I will definitely be out shopping and participating, but I don't think, doing an emergency ordinance for balloons is a good use of anything. And I'm not against the businesses, but I don't believe in doing something that we think is one time and it comes back and someone else wants to do something different. We have to consider it. So when does the one time stop?
That's a great point. So here's a couple thoughts that I have. If they want to do the balloon arch, absolutely 100% I'm behind, I support that, but bring it inside. Then you don't need an emergency ordinance. You still get the same effect of the balloon arch. It's inside the doors or right, it's not on the outside. So we don't have to do an ordinance. And Councilwoman Bryant Ward is I like her perspective from there. We had, and Director Harrington will remember this, we had a business that had an inflatable for a, that was right on Charles Street, advertising a open house. And it's fantastic. And they only used it for a couple hours. But to Councilwoman Bryant Ward's point, it was only a one-time deal. You know, I mean, and they only had it up there, but it wasn't allowed because it's a distracting device. It's an inflatable. So I definitely see both perspectives. I think that we can achieve the arch look, which is pretty darn cool, but just inside their doorway. And that way we don't have to have an emergency ordinance for something that every time that it's against the code. Councilman Trollinger?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but you said this inflatable already, I mean, they weren't asking for permission, right? I mean, they didn't ask for a one-time permission.
They did not. They just put it up with there, but had they asked for one-day permission for this event, it was only a few hours. Do we do an emergency ordinance for that? It's only one time.
I do have one more point to make.
Yes.
That balloons in bunches of 7 are permitted under our code. Inflatables, like the giant inflatable, is not allowed at all. So if the businesses wanted to, every single one of them could put 7 balloons on short strings outside of their business. So do you want 7 balloons on every single business flapping around? Or do you want a balloon arch? That's where we're kind of in a...
And Ms. Director Harrington, I mean, is it 7 as a bunch? Or is it 7 total? Because they could do multiple bunches of 7 balloons, right?
One bunch of 7 balloons per
business. Okay, but let me ask you this. So where there is, one of the businesses has 5 businesses behind that closed door, can they do 5 bunches?
Technically, they could. Our code, the code is awful. And the town attorney agreed with me that we need to look at this code in general.
Yep.
But I did want to make that point that we do allow balloons in one bunch of 7 per entity. So.
And I don't like how they say it's on a short leash, because I made the comparison. You know, usually people think that I'm tall, but next to my 6'5" kid, I'm considered short. What is short? Is 7 inches short? Is 12 feet short? It's all in perspective. Councilwoman Bryant Ward.
So, Director Harrington, you just added another element to this discussion. You saying that the code is a bad code. That makes me think differently. The arch is not 7 balloons though, right? The arch is more than 7 balloons.
Correct, and that's one of the provisions. It's the exemption from the number of balloons. We had a couple in there.
And it's not tethered.
Okay.
Okay, that's what makes it a distraction.
So if Director Harrington feels that the code in and of itself is not a good code, we need to revisit it, then that changes my perspective. And it only changes my perspective because that means we put a barrier in place that doesn't need to be there. If that caveat wasn't added to the conversation, I would stand on what I'm saying. But because you're saying that it is not a good code right now as it stands, it's an access barrier, then I'm fine with the arches.
All right, Councilman Trollinger.
I just was gonna say, if we're gonna allow them to put a balloon arch inside versus outside, it's pointless because the whole point is to bring attention on the outside. If they're already inside, they don't need a balloon arch. So
I'm always looking for compromises.
I hear you, but we should either let them have the balloons or not at all, because it's just silly to have the balloons in a hallway that nobody can see unless they're already there. So
I really struggled with this when they came to me with the request. I just kind of went, oh,
yeah.
Let's talk to the town attorney. He's the one that recommended an emergency ordinance, and then he also clearly stated this code is terrible. We need to revisit this and revise it. And I said, yes, we do. Aaron would agree with me as well. I know he would.
Yeah, it makes your job harder.
Okay.
Councilman Jenkins.
I mean, Director Harrington, you articulated my pain from a number of years ago, because and not to make this personal, but you articulated exactly the code is not good, and so I just have a concern that so now we're going to go out and make emergency legislation for every little thing. It just again suggests that the code needs to be fixed. So thank you for saying that, because that definitely changes my perspective as well.
Absolutely. I just want to clarify that we are going to be revisiting Chapter 181-36 and 35. And as you notice, we keep doing temporary sign moratoriums as well. So I am
Right.
currently working on the sign code. The first draft of that is done. So any of these that we're noticing that we're having a lot of recurrent issues, we are revisiting those code sections for revision.
Okay.
I must say, I didn't think I would ever have to talk about balloons again, but thank
Me
you
either.
for that.
Me-
Oh
me
my
either.
There's
gosh.
more coming.
Woo! Okay, so we've heard from everyone. I need a motion to either accept the temporary moratorium on enforcement of certain regulations in Chapter 181-36 as presented, or we don't. So I'm opening it up to whomever would like to speak.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I move that we accept the, move it back. Who changed the?
Now I can't read the top.
I can read it because I printed it out.
We accept the temporary moratorium on enforcement of certain regulations in Chapter 181-36 allowed devices.
For
I'll
the
second that
period, okay, and Councilman Trollinger seconded. And my comment is that we accept this emergency ordinance, knowing that it is regulated just to do the Friday before shop
The
small
3 days.
to end on that Sunday. So we have you have another discussion point?
Well, just I guess just to reiterate the need to change the code, and again, just to reiterate the trust and the ability to maintain a good relationship in working with the La Plata Business Association. I
Thank
think
you
that's
for that.
important to keep that in our heads.
So we have a motion that has been properly seconded. All in favor of passing this temporary moratorium on enforcement of certain regulations in Chapter 181-83, allowed devices, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you, Director Harrington, for bringing this to our attention.
Thank
Matters
you.
of information. Brent, I'm going to allow you to speak. Isn't that nice?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to bring council up to speed, we did present at the Charles County delegation bond hearing last evening, with the ask being $500,000 for the future Dorchester Street Community Center. I think it was received. We received questions from the delegation, which I believe was a good sign. When you do these hearings, your worst case scenario is for them to say thank you next. So we did receive questions from the delegation, so we were pleased about that. Additionally, staffs met with our consultant as far as ARPA funding today. We also met with the Neighborhood Design Center this morning, and this afternoon we conducted another meeting. So we are very busy and would entertain any questions council may have.
And you did a very nice job on our behalf last night, so thank you very much. Councilwoman Bryant Ward.
Mr. Manuel, you did do a phenomenal job last night, and I really appreciate you were very succinct and to the point and got the message across. But I do have a question. So last night it was asked about, we call it the Dorchester Community Center, but the funding was received in the Kent Avenue corridor. I know that basically they're one in the same kind of, but the Dorchester Community Center is actually established as a 501c3. So are we getting funding in the right name? Is there a correction that needs to be made? Do we need to get legal counsel on that?
I don't, we can always get a interpretation from legal, but I think the important thing is the money is for the Dorchester Community Center. And even though it is listed as because I guess at the time that the original budget request through the governor, I don't believe we had a name for the facility. That was the reasoning behind it. And for consistency purposes, that's why I referred to it last night as the Kent Avenue Community Center, Kent Avenue Corridor Community Center. But in reality, they're one and the same. The money will be utilized for the Dorchester Street Community Center. At some point, it definitely doesn't look, we have sort of a mixed message. We have one project with two names, so it's obviously something we would like to avoid. So it may be time that we just square that up and just refer to it from here forward as the Dorchester Community Center request. And if there's anything we need to do legally behind the scenes to ensure that we are square, then we can do that. We can discuss that with the town attorney.
And perhaps just maybe sending an explanation of that, nature to the board of the Dorchester Community Center so that they can, clearly understand that there are not, multiple conversations going on that they're not aware of. I just think we need to be transparent in everything. So I think that would be maybe a good start to just send out a message to clarify.
Sure.
Okay, any other comments for bond hearing? All right, and also underneath matters of information. Veterans Day.
Oh, yes. Of course, Town Hall will be closed in observance of Veterans Day, and we also have looks like amendment to our trash collection schedule. Regular trash collection on Thursday, November 11th. Trash will be picked up on Friday, November 12th, so it will be pushed back one day. And then also additionally, no yard waste will be picked up on November 12th, 2021, probably due to the expanded volume of trash on that day.
And I would like to publicly thank Councilman Goldsmith, Councilwoman Bryant Ward, and Councilman Jenkins for their service to our country, and wish them a very, very happy Veterans Day. And I hope that you bring your DD-214 and whatever else, your ID out there, and go get some free meals. You have deserved it, and our country is better because of your service. So thank you so much for that.
Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Yes.
I don't know if we want to provide Councilman Trollinger an opportunity to discuss what will take place tomorrow night.
Absolutely, that would be great under matters of
Not
information.
to put Matt on the spot, or excuse me, Councilman Trollinger on the spot.
He's eating. I don't know what you're eating, but you're making me hungry. Okay.
Just a little gum here, just to keep the senses sharp. So coming up tomorrow night is a very exciting event for Charles County and the Charles County Chamber of Commerce. We have First Responders Appreciation event that is a dinner that is just to focus on the first responders of the county. There will be politicians that are there supporting them, but we're going to keep their talking to an absolute minimum, if at all, because the focus is on our great men and women of the county that serve the residents first before everything else. So we've been getting citations from around the state. So that's really exciting. There are going to be some presentations by local police, fire, EMS, and this is the first one, I think, in a very, very, very long time. And we're excited. So Charles County Fairgrounds, and I look forward to seeing some of you there, and we'll be great.
Councilman Trollinger, I have a question for you, and you may not know this answer. I know that we have prepared a special proclamation that was different than the one that we were presenting on the 28th, which was First Responder Appreciation Day. Do you know if the other agencies will be presenting? The county was going to give out 10 proclamations, and when I was speaking with the chamber, they wanted something different than the 10 that we were going to give out. So we have a totally different proclamation that is in the book and that will be handed out. I was wondering, do you know what the process is for that? Should we bring the 10, which is missing your signature, I may say, the 10 that we're supposed to give?
Yeah, I showed up last week to sign all this stuff and nobody was around. So, yeah, I can grab those from the town this evening and I can bring them. There's no problem with that. My understanding was that there was going to be a display for all of the local elected officials designations. So you heard me thank our guests today. We got one from Senator Cardin almost right away. But Miss Patterson got one from the Southern Maryland delegation to us yesterday. So there's going to be a display of all of them. So I'd be happy to bring the town of La Plata to add to that group.
I think the chamber already has that. They picked that up yesterday. So that's awesome. It was just the ones that we were going to hand out to the specific organizations on the 28th. And I think what we'll do is, if it's okay with you, we'll bring it so that you can sign it. And should they should the agencies be there, we'll be prepared. But thank you for that. I look forward to that. I think that's going to be a wonderful event, and thank you for sponsoring that and working with the chamber. It is so important to recognize our first responders.
Sure.
Anything other than under matters of information? Councilwoman Bryant Ward.
Madam Mayor, thank you. Chairman Gann of the Planning Commission and I interviewed an applicant on October 29th. I did introduce her to some of the councilmen on the 30th at the Fall Festival, and I would like to bring her forward for approval.
All right. So can you tell us a little bit about her?
Oh, excellent. Her name is Dawn Banks. She's worked with the federal government, I think she said, for over 30 years, has a lot of experience in research and detailing information to bring forward for various, government agencies. Just a wealth of knowledge. Chairman Gann was just over the moon impressed with her, and she's willing to serve. Nobody's forcing her to, so that's always a good thing. So she's excited about it. She's done her due diligence and looking up things. She's asking me questions. It's very exciting to have somebody that is engaged and interested. So I think she would be a great fit.
Would she be a permanent member or an alternate?
She would be a permanent member. We did have another applicant that we interviewed. She was excited, but the next day she withdrew her application. So we are now with a permanent, and we need an alternate, and we did get an application today.
Oh, fantastic. And does Ms. Banks understand the not only the commitment, but the education that she would have to go through? Okay, fantastic. If you feel good about her and your chair feels good about her, I have no reason why that we should not elect her to the board or appoint her to the board. So I need a nomination or a motion, I'm sorry, from the floor.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion to approve the nomination of Donna Banks to the Planning Commission.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, and her name's Dawn, like Delta Dawn.
I'm sorry.
All in favor of appointing Dawn Banks to the Planning Commission, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you so much, Councilwoman Bryant Ward, for bringing that forward. That'll be great to round that out, and hopefully this next one will be a good alternate. There's one other thing that I would like to bring up under matters of information, and Mr. Manuel, if it's not the appropriate time, tell me after I say my whole spiel. But we are in desperate need after hearing from the Main Street Maryland, which Councilman Jenkins was on, and the DCC and the Arts and Entertainment District, which they're coming in on the 19th. We are in desperate need of an economic development director in order to move forward with any of our initiatives. So we're stagnant right now because of that body, as I indicated to Roderick before. So is there a way, and let me ask you this, Brent, what do we need to do to move this forward, to get this on the books, to get a body? I know that it involves budget and all of that, but we have the need. How do we move forward with this?
Of course, as you well identified, we don't have a budget for it. We do not have a job description for it. We'll be creating sort of from scratch. And also we have to determine if it's the will of the council. Many organizations with Main Street start with a part-time individual because they do have to transition to a 501c3. So they will separate from to be full Main Street status, they have to be fully separated from the town and stand alone as a 501c3 with an executive director.
Not according to, sorry to interrupt, not according to Christine on Thursday. We could actually have a staff member, and it is in our code that we have a community director, a community development department. So I think there might be, and Michelle, if you're still on, chime in. I think there might be already written up, but that surprised me too. She said that we could, for the first couple of years, at least have a staff member, and kind of encourage it that way. It has to be a line item though, is what she said.
Do we have to separate? Do they have to be a 501c3 or?
Dave, I don't think so.
As I understand it, the young lady from the meeting said that eventually it could transfer to a nonprofit entity. But her initial comments talked about frankly, because of the workload, it may be initially to have it within the government itself, and then it eventually could transition to a nonprofit.
And this is for full-fledged Main Street status, or is this for an affiliate status?
No,
it's for
full Main Street application, full-fledged Main Street designation.
Okay, Maryland's different than most of the states, so they can do whatever they want. Okay, that's fine. But still, we have a lot of work to do on our end if it's the will of the council, just to get up and going. Because first we have to find the money, because that will be a continuing expenditure. It's not like a one-off expense. So our budget will have to support. Next thing is we have to try to find someone. So we're anticipating a full-time position.
Yes, it will eventually have to be a full-time position, and she said full-time position, and she specifically said a line item.
Well, I mean, but I'm sorry, Councilmember Bryant, you had your hand raised. Sorry, go ahead.
So I'm just wondering, we have a lot of overlap, right? We have a lot of roles and overlap. Is it not that we could look at, kind of like what economic development is? I'm not talking about Main Street, anything. I'm talking about for an economic development person for the town to help develop us and, our economic needs, identify items that would help move us along. And we have someone that does some things that look like economic development. So could we not combine the role? That's just my thought.
And we can, because, in my opinion, because it is in our code, it's called a community development director. If correct me if I'm wrong on that, but we have it in the code already. We just have never exercised our right to have a person fill that role.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's just back to the budget. It's not a budgeted expense, so we would that would probably be the place to start. Would be to amend the budget. But I also will just reinforce the fact that we are doing an organizational assessment.
That's what I was going to say.
So
Right.
I don't want to say they very well could say that, but at least we would have supporting data to base our decision on. And we're hopeful to have that information back by the end of the year. I believe Kevin, I don't know if Kevin's still on, but I think the timelines were to sort of complete the class and compensation as well as the organizational assessment by the end of calendar year. Therefore, they could be used as part of the budget process and decision-making process for council moving forward. So where I appreciate the enthusiasm, I think it may be to our best benefit to await the results of this study.
Agreed.
Because we're only talking about a month and some change potentially.
Agreed. Councilman Jenkins?
Yeah, I thank you, Mr. Manuel. I was just going to add to that very thought process. And I'm not, correct me if I'm wrong, Mayor, I'm not sure if it could initially just be a part-time that could evolve into full-time. And that's, again, something that perhaps the budget cycle as well as this organizational study could provide some additional documentation. So thank you for that.
And Amy will be down on the 19th for our Arts and Entertainment District tour, and she is with Main Street Maryland. So I would encourage all council members to have some questions ready so we can ask should you so desire. Excellent. Future work session topics.
Well, we're still putting together the agenda for the 16th, and as right now, we're still waiting on some to finalize certain things. Looks like we will came in at the 11th hour, but we are going to get it on the agenda that a trash and recycling container purchase. I think as Director Stahl mentioned during his report, we are rolling through these containers due to new housing starts. So we will be getting that, and I think we'll be able to piggyback off the original contract that was written, if I remember from the communications today. But that will definitely be on, and we're also looking, I think, with Vera Mobility, I think that's going to be pushed to December. It just has to, which is the red light camera consultant that we are utilizing. So that is a one-year rollover. But I think it needs to be signed prior to January 1. So I think we may be able to move that to December. And then I think we had a discussion, I'd inadvertently moved on a workflow between town staff, mayor, and council. That discussion will potentially take place next week if we can get the documentation completed on that. But other things we have potentially would be the Southwest Quadrant if we can get those, the bids came back. And so if our engineer can clear and certify that, you know, the bids are, the low bid is complete, excuse me, and bless you, then we should maybe be able to bring that back to council, as well as I think we may be kicking to December the major facility fee discussion.
Great.
The engineer did come back, Brent, just so you were aware, the engineer did come back, so I would like to keep that for next week if possible.
Great, thank you. And Brent, can we also maybe next week, and I don't know if it's not a council thing or if it's just on a staff level, talk about streamlining the business meetings so that we don't have to, that we are responsible for reading the reports and not necessarily having the directors have to present their report. I would greatly appreciate, you know, we're very cognizant of their time and the meetings can run very long. And as we have discussed previously, if maybe having them just available for questions, because this council is awesome about reading the material ahead of time. And with Kelly at the helm, not allowing us to have any late submissions, she scares me a little bit, then we should have all of our material by Thursday. So we should have Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday to review that, and then just allow our great directors to be on hand should we have any questions, or we can submit questions prior. Do we need to put that in a future work session, or did I just do that?
I think you may have just done that. But if it's the will of council, you know, that was something that we had discussed, that we are now doing the weekly report. So you're getting 4 of those as well. The monthly reports or end of month reports typically are comprised of the information that you've already received in the weekly report.
Right.
It's just compiled in one place. So in many ways, you will have read everything twice, and then I'm not sure that it's necessary to hear it as well. But I just want to reinforce that if you do have questions of anything that you read, once you have a question, please reach out, and it may be something that we could, if it's depending on the magnitude of the question, we could have the department head appear that night to address the question, or it may be something simple that we could answer over the phone or through email about any given report. But, I think that judging from our last business meeting, a large chunk of the time that was associated with that meeting was in giving those reports. And if you had already read the report, it gets a little redundant, and I understand where it is a concern because our meetings are stretching out. And we have enough business to keep us busy as opposed to, we're not short of agenda topics.
Councilwoman Bryant Ward.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Manuel, I don't know if this is the proper time or not, but I've had several questions asked about the traffic study for St. Mary's and the intersection of Glen Aubin. That was something that was brought to some of the residents by Captain Becker, I believe, and there was no resolution. And one of the residents felt that now that he was gone, that we would drop the ball and not come up with anything on that. And I would like for us not to drop the ball, because I also had someone ask me about it at the farmer's market. So if we can just get an answer out there for that, I would love to have that.
Yes. Councilwoman Bryant Ward, I actually met with our transportation consultant, I believe it was in the last week, and I have tasked him with doing intersection studies at Centennial and St. Mary's, as well as Glen Aubin and St. Mary's. So he has provided a proposal, and I will be signing off on those probably. Hopefully I'll have time to actually do work tomorrow and not be in some meetings all day, but I plan to do that tomorrow. So the study will begin.
I greatly appreciate you. Thank you.
Okay, so that's future work sessions. Before we open the public forum, I see Mr. Runfola is here. I want to address, I would like to personally invite Mr. Runfola to be on our work session, our business meeting on the 23rd of November, so that you can make a 5-minute presentation to council about what your proposal is for the surveys and how it will impact our town. The one thing that should you, Mr. Runfola, decide that you would like to take this opportunity to be part of our agenda, I only ask that you state the facts and move forward. We can't do anything from the past, and I know that's a lot has been said. We can't verify it, but should you so desire, we would love to make you a line item on the agenda on the 23rd of November. So with that said, I will open the floor. Does anybody like to speak for the public forum?
I would, Mayor.
All right, the floor is yours. Please state your name, your address, and whether you're in the incorporated town limits for the record.
113 Morris Drive, within the incorporated town of La Plata. I would like to be on that November 23rd meeting.
Fantastic.
From a previous business meeting of September 28th, I recommended that before proceeding further with any hub annexation request, a firm statement needs to be made by the petitioner and their attorney that they will follow through with commitments, plural, already made to the town. And if they refuse and continue to renege and try to weasel out of these commitments, no further presentations should be entertained by the town. I believe a full discussion by the entire town council, culminating with a vote resulting in council members' accountability should occur. Anything less would constitute a betrayal to the citizens. At a business meeting, at our last business meeting on October 26th, I asked to hear from 4 town council members on this matter. The mayor wouldn't allow the council members to respond. In fact, just went on to the next agenda as if I never asked the question. Not one town council member interrupted to say, wait, Mayor, we were asked a question and a response, and you didn't even allow it. Not one person spoke up and said, we need more time to collect our thoughts. That didn't happen. In fact, Mayor, you said they needed more time to collect their thoughts. How could you possibly know that, since they never responded to that? This is not a topic that's unfamiliar with them, and it seems like you, Mayor, needed more time to collect your thoughts to inform them how to respond. Now, as to whether or not these facts can be confirmed, they can be easily confirmed in multiple ways. I suggest you interview Daniel Mears, if you haven't already, to which these commitments were made on December 18, 2015. I have confirmed this with him then and several times after that in front of witnesses. I would suggest you also interview Danielle Manley, our town clerk, who was present during many of the meetings from July of 2015 through 2016, where this was discussed in open sessions. In fact, they were even recorded and taped for TV. I would suggest also that you speak with Mayor Hale, who was our mayor at the time, and previous town council members who were also present during these discussions. And you can review taped meetings from July of 2015 through 2016. And you'll see that this was discussed in the presence of hub officials. In fact, they even gave me aerial maps to which I made a presentation that was taped for TV and showing that they had agreed to these commitments were made. Now, tonight, I would still like to hear from our town council members, knowing probably I'm going to get a coached, rehearsed, carefully crafted, manipulated groupthink response. Hardly original in any form, but I would like to hear from them tonight, and I'd like to hear from all of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Unfola. So are you foregoing being a line item on the agenda for the 23rd? And second of all, I really take issue with you accusing me of coaching our council. You can speak with the council. I have not spoken with this. It is not my issue. Excuse me, I'm speaking. I did not interrupt you, so I would expect the same respect. For you to say that they are going to be coached, there's only one person that can coach them that is familiar with this, and that would be me. So I take great issue with you stating that. If council would like to speak to this matter, they are more than welcome to speak to this matter tonight, or they can reserve their comments, questions when you give a presentation on the 23rd of November. If you choose to forego on the 23rd of November, they are more than welcome. I am not in control of them. I am one vote and they are one vote. So I will open it up to the floor and they can speak of what they wish. But I think that you need to carefully choose your words when you're accusing someone, especially the mayor, of coaching council, because that is the furthest thing from the truth. Council,
how could you possibly know that they needed time to collect their thoughts, Mayor?
Council,
you said they needed time. They didn't. And they were offered 2 opportunities to respond, and not one of them responded that they needed extra time.
Mr. Runfola,
so why did you make that statement?
Mr. Runfola, this is not, we do not absolutely have to get into a dialogue. It is a public forum where we as council have interacted with members of that have spoken up. You are to state what you want. We do not have to answer. We have given you the courtesy of answering. So I would never put council on the spot without being informed about what was going on. And there has not been a formal presentation by you to explain to them what you want. You have only insinuated certain things. So I am giving you that opportunity on the 23rd of November, should you take it.
I will take it.
Okay. And will you wait for council? And council, if you want to weigh in now, it is up to you. Or you can choose to wait until you hear the formal ask of Mr. Runfola on the 23rd of November.
How is this not a formal ask, Mayor? This is a formal ask tonight. They've had time to think about this. This is not a topic that's unfamiliar to them.
Council? Anyone like to weigh in? Councilman Jenkins.
I do not have enough information to make any kind of informed decision. I mean, I just don't have the knowledge. And frankly, I don't have anything particularly in writing that would give me some factual perspective. And then I would also add that the town has in place, I believe in the ordinance, that governs how annexations are processed through the town in terms of application, review, planning commission, public hearing, work sessions, goes to the town council, work sessions, and then another public hearing. And then there is opportunity if for a referendum. So there is a process in place that's no different than other towns in Maryland. So that would be my initial comment at this point in time.
Thank you, Councilman Jenkins. Councilwoman Bryant Ward.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Runfola, I've never had the opportunity to meet you, but I've heard you on several of our meetings. I do not know what your ask is. I've heard your concerns. I've heard you state what was said to you in the past on multiple occasions, but I'm not exactly sure what it is that you want us to weigh in on. I am nobody's puppet. I will not be managed by anybody. I have my own mind, and I plan to do what is in the best interest of my residents in Ward 1 and the entire town. So to say that we would be told how to respond, I think is totally unfair and unwarranted. I think you give us an opportunity to know what it is that you're asking of us so that we can respond. I have no clue what it is that you're asking. I know what you've asserted in your many conversations, but I don't know what the ask is. So I cannot respond, on the record without knowing what it is that you're asking of me.
Councilman Goldsmith or Councilman Trollinger, would you like to weigh in? If not, that is fine.
No, I'll comment as well. I think Councilman Jenkins made some good comments as far as we have procedures in place. And I don't recall in any of those procedures where it says you have to do a referendum. I think we were elected to do the job of best for the town and our wards as well, but basically what's best for the town. And we make the decisions based upon our knowledge that we get and the background information that we get. And not every citizen, unfortunately, is able to get that same information as the background. I personally think that the citizens have an opportunity with the open forums, with the capability to communicate in writing, with the email systems, everything else, to get their opinions to us. Then in turn, we can consider those opinions as we make our decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Trollinger.
I think in hearing my fellow council and the mayor discuss where they're at, I'd have to agree with them, but I'd like to have an open mind, Mr. Runfola. So if you do want to present something more than what we've heard at a future November meeting, I would take a look at it. I tend to agree with Councilman Goldsmith that I don't think every development or every opportunity is an opportunity for a referendum, but I'd like to hear your side, and you've got some time to prepare. I know you've had some time, so now knowing what the council and the mayor are looking for, perhaps something in writing, perhaps something and looking for meeting notes or something that you want us to call us attention to, I'm open to looking at it, but I can't give you an answer right now based on what you've given us. So thank you for bringing it up, but I look forward to getting more information from you.
Thank you very much, Council. And Mr. Runfola, should you would like to have anything in writing given to the council, the deadline for that, Kelly, correct me if I'm wrong, it's got to be submitted 7 days prior, is that it?
It's going to be in by the Thursday prior to the meeting.
Okay, the Thursday prior to the meeting. So that would be, the meeting is on Tuesday, the 23rd. So it would be on, I don't have my calendar in front of me. It is on the 18th, by the close of business on the 18th, correct?
By noon. On the
Okay,
18th.
by noon on the 18th. Fantastic. Okay, with that, do I have anybody else who would like to speak at the public forum? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second?
All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you all so much. We'll see you tomorrow night at the First Responders Appreciation Dinner. Happy Veterans Day, Dave, Evelyn, and Jim, and thank you so much for your service to our country.
Thank you. Unfortunately, I'm out of the area, so I will not be in attendance tomorrow night. So I appreciate the invitation, but unfortunately, I'm out of the area. Thank
You
you.
enjoy. All right, good night, all.
Thank you.
Aye.
Good night, everybody.